This is Cyber Sam. Let's teach tech. So I thought I'd talk about a topic that's been all-consuming for me right now. I am teaching a new course, and I have not been given a curriculum and learning targets and objectives and so on. So this is a great time to talk about the process of doing that. And I'm going to share what I've been doing. I'll share what I've been learning from my instructional coaches, and it's definitely a work in progress. It's real messy right now, and I've been going round and round, and I just thought I would just share all the struggles I've been going through in designing my curriculum.
I want to share the idea of backwards design and why is this a great approach to creating curriculum. So with standard course planning, you often start with the textbook, you write your syllabus, you write and revise lectures, you prepare PowerPoints, and then you create exams and problem sets and so on. That's very instructor-centered. With backwards design, we want to think about the learning goals. We want to set specific learning objectives, design assessments, formative and summative, develop learning activities like lectures, homework, etc., and that is more of a student-centered approach. Honestly, the way I do things is a little bit of a blend of this. I'll be straight up with you. I often start with the textbook. I do make sure that textbook aligns to my overarching broad learning goals, but to me, I think these days there's a way to kind of blend those approaches together as your starting point. So for example, this is the course guide that I've talked about in previous videos and how I approach the development of this course. So this is a course based on the CompTIA A+ certification, and which, if you're not familiar, is computer hardware, troubleshooting, getting you to show that you understand how computers and networks work, and have about, I think they say 12 months worth of tech experience in those areas. So the way I've approached that course is I chose an online curriculum that has simulated labs and a certification and so on, testing and so on as a part of the course. But instead of going chapter by chapter by chapter through the course, I focus on the outcomes. So the learning goals. And so what I've done is focused on how the certification exam is organized. So you might say I'm teaching to the test, shame on me, but that's basically what I'm doing. And so the certification organizes its objectives by hardware, software, security, and troubleshooting. So that's how I've decided to organize the course. And these numbers here for the practice labs and so on are based on, these numbers are the chapters, and you can see it's all over the place. So I'm not going straight through that textbook or online resource. I'm jumping around and I'm basing it on those overarching objectives of passing the certification. So having that overall broad learning goal, now I can get down to my like unit or even daily targets and objectives. So for this course, that first learning objective of hardware or unit, this is all work in progress, but I currently can say that I can evaluate, select, configure, and install appropriate. And then again, these are what's going to be asked of them and assessed of them at the end of the semester for that certification exam. They're going to be able to do these things with PC components, hardware components, storage, printers, network devices, and mobile devices. So they're going to have to be able to prove that they can do all of these things with those devices. So those are now my unit objectives and end up also being my daily learning targets depending on the lesson. And then for simplicity, again, I have this course guide, I call it, where last year I learned over COVID that students just want a one-pager. What do I need to do? So I tried to make it simple. I have one PowerPoint here I talked about in a previous video, and this one PowerPoint covers all of these topics. And then we practice, which all this practice is also covered in the PowerPoint lessons. And then I have one assessment that covers all of these targets. So now I've organized the design of my assessments based on those learning objectives. So if we look at the assessment, and again, this is all work in progress. I'm currently working in my PLC to tighten up what I'm doing here and working with my instructional coach, but this is where I'm at. So if you're familiar with standard reference grading, this is using numbers. Higher education, this is not as used much at all, but in K-12, this is a big educational trend, if you will, and I don't see it going away. So those same learning targets I identified in this document here are now on my assessment. This is my assessment, and my 3 is that I'm meeting my target. You might also say it's at the target, or you might use other verbiage, but that's what this says. So it's all right here at the top of this assessment, so students know exactly what we're assessing. And then the exceeding is you're doing something above and beyond. I'm not necessarily going to go through that today. And then the 2 is developing or progressing to a target. That means maybe we're lower on the Bloom's taxonomy, where we're doing things like identifying or explaining key terms. That's what I put as a general description of getting a 2. Again, I need to clean this up, but that's what it says. I also, for my assessments, like to have the resources linked right here as well for, again, the Quizlet and PowerPoint. Same thing here, the Quizlet and the PowerPoint are here. So my A is I can evaluate, select, configure, and install appropriate PC components. Again, that is this A from this target, and it is the same as here. It's all lines up. And so how can students demonstrate that they've got that? Well, they're going to identify these components and explain what they do in a computer. And then in this particular case, for my sanity of not having a gajillion components all over the place, and maybe I can be more creative, but I just have them put a screenshot of the labs that they completed in regards to power supplies, motherboards, processors, memory, expansion cards, that show that they can configure and do the work, not just identify and explain it. That would be a level 2, but this is that they can actually do the work. And that's kind of how the rest of the assessment goes. And maybe I can have a more detailed lesson on that, but that's the idea here with backwards design. We've got our overarching targets, we create our objectives, and we design assessments that line up exactly with the learning targets to show that and have students be able to prove that they have met the target. And then we can create lessons and activities that support the learning for those objectives and assessments. And this is another visual to show this. We have our learning outcomes, learning targets, whatever you want to, objectives, whatever you want to call them. Then we're thinking about the skills that we need to develop as a part of that, and then what content and so on can support the skills that eventually support the learning outcome. This visual is lacking the assessment piece of it, but just another way to think of creating coursework. Now I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here and show you that I've got a lot of work to do in this course I've been given, which is a game design course. And I'm going to be straight up with you, I am not a gamer. And so this is a course that I'm struggling with. but we are using Unity as our platform for this course. And the technical issues I've been having lately are installing Unity and getting that working on student machines. It's been a nightmare. So my thought process was to start with the end in mind with this backwards design. And so I ended up looking up that and finding out that Unity has certifications. So one of them is a Unity certified user artist. Another one is a Unity certified user programmer. My initial gut was I should develop my course to, like I do my other courses, and create this course based on getting my students prepared for the certification. I quickly found out that this was not the easiest route for me to go. There are online courses that you can pay to, follow their course and get yourself these certifications and train for that. As I'm working with high school students on this, and I think this is a platform that you could use with professionals and college students and so on. But I found that this ended up not being my approach because I didn't have the resources for this. I also had to learn terms, so I ended up going to, based on feedback from my instructional coach, I ended up going to my graphic design instructor close to me and saying, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? As I was going through this. But this would be one approach you could do. This could be, you could use these major headings as maybe your units, and then each of these subcategories could be a target. So that was my initial idea and initial approach. It didn't work out. I didn't necessarily have the activities and support, and I really needed, again, from the top, I really just wanted some kind of a textbook or something to help me get through this as an instructor who's learning for the first time with students. So I ended up, I've gone to Unity forums and contacted support because Unity has this educational framework that I thought could be really cool. So I found out there's this educational curricular framework from Unity, and I thought, oh, this is great. Look at this. It's all aligned. It's got all these units set up for me, and they had lessons and topics and activities, and then they also did the work of aligning it to technology standards. So this is great. But again, I ended up not having enough as an instructor to complete the work. I was creating all these lesson plans and things, and I had to create a lesson based on these bullet points, and I just couldn't see myself completing an entire semester that way. It was just gonna end up being too much work. These days we're sometimes spoiled when we get a textbook or some educational resources. They provide PowerPoints, they provide materials for you to create lessons and activities. And this looks all good on paper, but it wasn't enough for me. So I ended up continuing to look for resources, and I found that Unity has this website called Unity Learn, and this was really what I needed because it was from the very beginning, step by step. It listed the skills, so I can use these as learning targets. I can use these as success criteria, which we'll have to talk about another time. I haven't talked about success criteria, and I'm still learning about that stuff. But this is what I needed, not just because it lists all the skills out that we're going to be learning along the way, but it had the step-by-step videos and instruction and all the things to get me through get me and my students through the learning. And I also found that they have other pathways, so like a junior programmer pathway. So in 12 weeks they can get into the C+ programming part of Unity and so on. So this ended up being the route I'm going, and I'm not there yet. Obviously, I've got to build out the targets here, but I'm going to end up using Unity Essentials, Explore Unity, and the Junior Programmer pathways on Unity Learn to help my students and me get supported through all the new learning and the goals of the course. So if you look at this, I'm probably somewhere in the middle here. Again, I really am needing a resource like a textbook. In this case, it's Unity Learn. And then from there, I'm getting my big objectives, and I'm gonna, at some point soon, hopefully be able to build some assessments for students to show that they understood the major goals of the curriculum. Maybe as I develop the course over time, I might be able to map that to the certification and see if what we're doing through those pathways and so on is aligning to the certification. I'm just not there yet. That would be also my ultimate goal, is to get my students prepared to be certified. So there you have it. That's the backwards design process. This is my real world examples of how I'm using it in my classroom as I'm developing curriculum for my programs. I hope this was helpful to you.
I'd love for you to share what you use to organize and design your curriculum. Do you use backwards curriculum design? How do you approach making sure what you're teaching is aligning to standards and certifications and other criteria? How do you approach creating your curriculum? Please share that in the comments. This is Cyber Sam for Let's Teach Tech. We'll see you next time.